They thought the galaxy's past was written in peace, etched into stone by species who never knew war. But beneath the surface of ancient ruins, a darker legacy was waiting, one that would rewrite everything humanity thought it had hidden and everything the galaxy believed it had outgrown. Another perfectly peaceful civilization, senior researcher Dr. Elara Voss announced, her forearms gesturing excitedly at the holographic display. The blue-tinted projection showed intricate cave paintings from yet another primitive species, depicting groups gathering berries and building shelters. Not a single image of conflict, combat, or weapons. Just like every other archaeological site they'd studied over the past 3 cycles. She adjusted her environmental suit's temperature controls. The ancient ruins were stiflingly hot, even for her heat-tolerant Andarian physiology, but the discomfort was worth it. This was the 57th site that supported her groundbreaking theory about the galaxy's peaceful origins. Lyra, come look at this. The brushwork suggests communal living spaces, shared resources, no territorial boundaries. She waved over her research assistant, Lyra Soren, whose silvery scales shimmered under the harsh work lights as she approached. Lyra tilted her head, her expression skeptical as usual. With respect, senior researcher, couldn't they simply have chosen not to record any conflicts? Perhaps they only painted the positive aspects of their society. Elara clicked her tongue in friendly disapproval. Always the skeptic, Lyra. But look here. She zoomed in on a particular section. See these markings? They're practically identical to the cooperative hunting patterns we found in the Rigel system and the Centauri ruins and the Pleiades sites. The statistical probability of so many species independently developing purely peaceful societies is remarkably high according to our data, Lyra finished. But her tone suggested she wasn't entirely convinced. She pulled up her own research tablet, sharp claws tapping rapidly on the surface. Though, I still think we should consider the possibility that we're missing something. The galaxy is vast, and our sample size spans 3 spiral arms and covers 12 different evolutionary paths, Elara interrupted, her enthusiasm bubbling over. Every single primitive species we've studied showed no signs of warfare, no weapons development, no combat tactics. They all progressed from hunter-gatherer societies directly to cooperative agricultural communities. The hologram shifted as Lyra input new parameters, showing a timeline of their discoveries. Dozens of civilizations spanning millions of years, all following the same peaceful pattern of development. It was beautiful. It was perfect. It confirmed everything Elara had suspected about the natural order of intelligent life. The Council of Science will have to acknowledge the validity of my theory now, Elara said, already imagining her presentation. The natural state of sapient life is cooperation, not conflict. These ruins prove that primitive species instinctively form peaceful societies. The very concept of warfare must have been introduced later, probably through some kind of cultural contamination. Lyra suddenly went still, her scales shifting to a pale gray, a sign of surprise or concern in her species. Senior researcher, I'm picking up some unusual readings from the lower chamber. There's a sealed section we haven't explored yet. Wonderful. Elara gathered her equipment. Let's document it right away. The more evidence we collect, the stronger our case becomes. As they made their way deeper into the ruins, Elara's mind raced with possibilities. Perhaps they'd find more art, showing cooperative farming techniques, or maybe ceremonial gathering spaces for community celebrations. Every new discovery supported her hypothesis about the inherently peaceful nature of primitive societies. She hardly noticed Lyra's growing agitation as they approached the sealed chamber, too caught up in her own excitement. The younger researcher's scales had shifted to an even paler shade, but Ilara was already reaching for the ancient door controls. "The preservation in this section is remarkable," she commented, running a scanner over the sealed entrance. "These ruins might be even older than we initially thought, possibly dating back to the earliest days of galactic civilization. Just imagine what we might learn about the true nature of intelligent life." The door slid open with a hiss of ancient machinery, releasing a burst of stale air. Ilara stepped forward eagerly, ready to document more evidence of her peaceful origin theory. She didn't notice Lyra's warning chirp, or the way her assistant's scales had now bleached completely white, the color of absolute terror. She was too busy staring at what lay beyond the threshold, her own excited smile frozen on her face as her forearms went limp at her sides. Because there, illuminated by their work lights, was something that shouldn't exist. Something that, according to everything she believed about primitive societies, couldn't exist. Something that would shatter her perfect theory into a million glittering pieces. The chamber walls were covered in detailed murals unlike anything Ilara had seen in her 20 years of xenoarchaeology. These weren't the simple cave paintings she'd been documenting. These were precise, technical diagrams, mathematical formulas, and what appeared to be battle plans. "This can't be right," she muttered, scanning the walls with trembling hands. "Lyra, recalibrate the dating equipment. There must be some mistake." Lyra's voice came out as barely more than a whisper. "I already did, senior researcher. 3 times. These ruins are older than any we've studied. They predate every other site by at least 50,000 years. Ilara shook her head in denial. "But look at the technological sophistication, the architectural detail, the weapon specifications. No, these can't be weapons. They must be farming tools or mining equipment." "Those are definitely weapons," a new voice interrupted. Both researchers spun around to see Dr. Cale Wren, the team's military historian, standing in the doorway. His dark eyes were wide with professional interest as he studied the diagrams. And not just any weapons. These designs are revolutionary, even by modern standards. Ilara felt her professional composure cracking. But primitive species don't develop weapons. They focus on cooperation and community building. Every site we've studied proves. Every site except this one, Cale pointed out, stepping closer to examine a particularly detailed mural. "Look at these formation patterns. The spacing, the overlapping fields of fire, the tactical considerations. Whoever built this place understood warfare on a fundamental level." Lyra's scales had shifted to a deep blue, her species' color of intense concentration. The architectural style matches the other ruins we found, but the content is completely different. It's like finding a library full of advanced calculus in a prehistoric cave. "More like finding a military academy market," he corrected. He pointed to a series of diagrams that made Ilara's heart sink. "These are training scenarios, combat simulations, and look at these mathematical formulas. They're calculating weapon trajectories, explosive yields, armor penetration values." "No," Ilara insisted, her professional reputation flashing before her eyes. "There must be another explanation. Perhaps this was a later addition or contamination from a more advanced species." Her words died in her throat as Lyra activated a holographic interface hidden within the wall. The chamber filled with 3-dimensional projections of soldiers in formation, weapons at the ready. The level of detail was staggering. Even Cale looked shocked. "This technology," he breathed. "It's beyond anything we have now. These aren't records of primitive warfare. This is advanced military science from an ancient civilization that predates everything we know about galactic history. Elara watched in horrified fascination as the holographic soldiers demonstrated combat maneuvers that would make modern military strategists weep with envy. The precision, the efficiency, the perfect integration of technology and tactical doctrine. The dating can't be accurate. She tried one last time. No species could have achieved this level of military sophistication so early in their development. It goes against everything we know about societal evolution. Kale turned to her with sympathy in his eyes. Maybe that's because we've been looking at it backward. What if these aren't records of primitive warfare? What if these are the teaching materials left behind by the species that introduced the concept of warfare to the galaxy? Lyra's scales rippled with excitement. The archaeological evidence supports that theory. Look at how the architectural styles influence all later sites. This civilization didn't just predate the others, it shaped their development. But who were they? Elara asked, her scientific curiosity finally overcoming her disappointment. And where did they go? Before anyone could answer, Lyra's handheld scanner began beeping urgently. Senior researcher, I'm detecting a hidden chamber behind this wall, and there's some kind of power source still active. Kale examined the readings over her shoulder, his expression growing increasingly amazed. These energy signatures, they're similar to human technology, but that's impossible. Humanity only achieved spaceflight a few centuries ago. Elara felt a chill run down her spine as she remembered something from her early studies. Something about an obscure theory regarding human evolution and their unusually high number of predator species. Unless, she said slowly, her scientific mind already racing ahead to a conclusion she wasn't sure she wanted to reach. Unless we're not looking at humanity's ancestors, Lyra finished the thought, her scales shifting to brilliant gold, the color of academic breakthrough. We're looking at their teachers. The hidden door began to slide open, revealing secrets that had waited millennia to be discovered. And somewhere, in the back of her mind, Elara realized that her theory about peaceful origins hadn't been exactly wrong. She had simply failed to account for the species that made that peace necessary in the first place. The diplomatic chamber aboard the Galaxy Science Council's flagship buzzed with nervous energy as Commander Rourke Thane stepped through the airlock. Behind him, Lieutenant Mira Kyle moved with the liquid grace that marked all human military personnel, a fact that made the assembled alien diplomats shift uncomfortably in their seats. "Welcome, Admiral," announced Chancellor Althea Virel, her crystalline form catching the light. "We appreciate your willingness to discuss our recent discoveries." Elara watched from her position near the research team's table, noting how the human delegates carried themselves. Every movement seemed calculated, precise. Even their casual stances suggested combat readiness. After 3 months studying the ancient military archives, she recognized the patterns. "Let's skip the pleasantries," Commander Thane said, his voice carrying the weight of authority. "You found our ancestors' training facility." The chamber erupted in surprised murmurs. Lyra's scales flickered rapidly between colors, betraying her shock. Even Dr. Kale Wren looked taken aback, and he'd spent years studying human military history. "Your ancestors?" Chancellor Virel's voice cracked slightly, but the facility predates recorded history by 50,000 years, give or take. Lieutenant Kyle finished, smiling. "We were wondering when someone would finally find it." Elara couldn't contain herself any longer. But that's impossible. The technological level, the military doctrine, the weapons designs, they're all far too advanced for a primitive species. Commander Thane turned to her, his expression amused. "Who said humans were primitive?" We didn't evolve on some peaceful garden world like most species. Earth was, and still is, a death world. We weren't just fighting other tribes, Dr. Brex. We were fighting everything our planet could throw at us. The predator species, Kale breathed, realization dawning. That's why humans have so many combat instincts. You didn't develop them later. They were necessary for survival from the very beginning. Bingo, Lieutenant Kale said, using a human expression that made several translator units stutter. While other species were developing cooperative farming techniques, we were inventing new ways to hunt, fight, and protect our communities. It wasn't just about warfare, it was about survival. Lyra brought up a holographic display of the ancient training scenarios. But these formations, these tactics, they're incredibly sophisticated. How could a prehistoric society... Because we had to be sophisticated to survive, Commander Thane interrupted. You think those diagrams are impressive? They're basic training materials. The real advanced stuff was stored elsewhere. The implications hit Alara like a gravity wave. The peaceful societies we've been studying, they weren't the natural state of primitive species, were they? They were the result of human intervention. Chancellor Varel finished, her crystalline form dimming with concern. You guided their development, protected them while they evolved. But why? Commander Thane's expression softened slightly. Because we knew what it was like to evolve through constant conflict. When we first achieved spaceflight and found other developing species, we made a choice. We would be the warriors, so they wouldn't have to be. That's why we find no evidence of primitive warfare in other species, Kale said excitedly. Humans were actively preventing it, teaching them cooperative strategies instead. Lieutenant Kyle nodded. We became the galaxy's first line of defense. While other species focused on art, science, and culture, we maintained the military knowledge necessary to protect them. But that's not what your historical records show, Lyra pointed out, her scales shifting to deep purple confusion. According to official data, humans only achieved spaceflight 3 centuries ago. Commander Thane smiled. Those are the official records. Yes, just like those ruins were officially undiscovered until now. Some secrets need to stay secret until the right time. And now is the right time? Alara asked, her scientific curiosity overriding her shock. Look around the galaxy, Dr. Brex, Lieutenant Kale said seriously. New threats are emerging. Species that evolved without our guidance are beginning to expand aggressively. The peace we helped create is under threat, which is why, Commander Thane added, we are finally revealing the truth. The galaxy needs to understand that peace isn't the natural state of the universe. It's something that must be protected, sometimes with diplomacy, sometimes with strength. Chancellor Virel's crystalline form pulsed with anxiety. You're suggesting we need to learn warfare after millennia of peace? No, Commander Thane said firmly. We're suggesting you need to learn why peace is worth protecting and why humanity has always been willing to bear the burden of that protection. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Alara looked at her research notes, thousands of pages documenting peaceful societal development across the galaxy. She had thought she was proving the natural harmony of intelligent life. Instead, she had been documenting humanity's greatest achievement, teaching the galaxy a better way to evolve. Lyra's scales settled into a deep gold understanding. The weapons weren't just about fighting, were they? They were about responsibility, the responsibility to protect. Finally, Lieutenant Kale said softly, "Someone gets it." The High Counselor rose, her crystalline form bright with purpose. "I believe, Commander Thane, we have much to discuss about the future of galactic security." "Yes," he agreed. "We do, starting with what else was hidden in those ruins. Because believe me, Dr. Brex, you've only scratched the surface of humanity's first gift to the galaxy." Elara felt a shiver of excitement replace her earlier shock. She had started this research trying to prove the galaxy's peaceful origins. Instead, she had discovered something far more profound: the species that had sacrificed their own peaceful development to ensure everyone else could have it. "Play the message again," Elara requested, leaning forward in her seat aboard the research vessel. The holographic projection flickered to life, showing a recording that had lain dormant for 50,000 years. A human woman in ancient military dress appeared, her uniform unlike anything in modern records. "To those who find this facility, we leave our legacy. I am Commander Andrea Walsh of the 1st Guardian Fleet. What you are about to learn will reshape your understanding of galactic history." Lyra, Kale, and several other researchers gathered around as the ancient commander continued. The ship's viewing chamber was silent, except for the sound of the recording and the soft hum of Lyra's scales, shifting colors with each revelation. "Earth was not our first home," Commander Walsh revealed. "We originated on another world, one that made Earth look like a paradise. Our species evolved through constant struggle, endless competition, and relentless predation. When we finally reached the stars, we found something unexpected. Life was developing differently everywhere else." The hologram shifted to show various peaceful worlds, each teeming with evolving species. These emerging civilizations had no concept of warfare, no understanding of defense. Their worlds had no large predators, no environmental pressures pushing them toward aggression. They were beautiful, innocent, and completely vulnerable. "That's why there were no weapons in any other archaeological sites," Kale whispered. "They never needed them." Commander Walsh's image returned. "We faced a choice. We could conquer these worlds easily. None could have resisted us. Or we could protect them, guide them, ensure their peaceful development while we stood guard against the darker aspects of the universe." The recording showed massive space battles against cosmic horrors that made Elara's hearts race. Humanity fighting threats that would have annihilated the peaceful species before they even achieved consciousness. "We chose to be guardians," Walsh continued. "We established hidden bases like this one across the galaxy. We edited our own history, making it appear we were latecomers to the galactic stage. We became myths, legends, stories told to children about ancient and protectors." Lyra's scales had settled into a deep gold, the color of profound realization. "The warrior angels," she breathed. "Every species has legends about powerful beings watching over their early development. They weren't myths at all." The hologram displayed a series of technological schematics. "We leave these records now because we know they'll be needed. The galaxy cannot remain innocent forever. New species will evolve without our guidance. Old threats will return. When that happens, the peaceful worlds we protected will need to understand why we made the choices we did." Elara watched as images showed humans teaching early civilizations about agriculture, medicine, and science, but carefully steering them away from weapons development. "They shaped every aspect of our development," she realized, "not just protecting us, but actively guiding us toward peaceful cooperation." "Your ancestors weren't warriors," Commander Walsh stated firmly. "They were teachers, artists, philosophers. We made sure of that. We bore the burden of violence so you would never have to know its touch. But now, as we predicted, that peace faces new threats." The recording showed star maps, predictions of cosmic events, an emerging hostile species, predictions that were proving eerily accurate after 50 millennia. The time has come for the truth to be known, Walsh concluded. Humanity's greatest achievement wasn't mastering warfare. It was teaching the galaxy a better way to live. We are not revealing this to encourage violence, but to help you understand why peace must sometimes be defended with force. The hologram flickered out, leaving the research team in stunned silence. Kale was the first to speak. This changes everything we thought we knew about societal development. No, Elara corrected, a smile spreading across her face. It explains everything we never understood. Why every species, except humans, developed peacefully. Why we find advanced human technology in ancient ruins. Why humanity seems to have an instinctive need to protect others. Lyra's scales rippled with excitement. The Council needs to see this immediately. If the predictions about new threats are accurate, they already know, a familiar voice interrupted. Commander Thane stood in the doorway, his expression serious. Why do you think we let you find this facility now? The threats Commander Walsh warned about are no longer theoretical. They're here. Elara looked at the star maps again, noting how many of the predicted danger zones matched current trouble spots in the galaxy. You need us to understand what's coming, to accept humanity's role as defenders. No, Commander Thane corrected. We need you to understand why that role exists in the first place. Peace isn't just the absence of conflict. It's the presence of protection. Humanity didn't give up its warrior nature. We gave it purpose. As if to emphasize his point, the ship's alert system suddenly blared to life. Lieutenant Kale's voice came over the comm. Admiral, we're detecting unauthorized ships entering the system. They match the profile of the raiders we've been tracking. Commander Thane's posture shifted subtly, and Elara recognized the combat stance from the ancient training diagrams. Right on schedule, he said calmly. Ready to see humanity's true legacy in action, Derbrek. The research station's emergency lights bathed everything in pulsing red as Elara ran through the corridors, following Commander Thane's precise instructions. Behind her, Lyra's scales had shifted to deep red battle ready, a color she'd never displayed before. Multiple hostile vessels detected, the station's AI announced. Unregistered species. Energy signatures suggest advanced weapons systems. They're not unregistered. Commander Thane's voice came through their comm units. They're the Ravagers, exactly the kind of threat Commander Walsh warned about, a species that evolved without our guidance. Lieutenant Kale's voice cut in. Station defenses activating. Dr. Breck, get your team to the Central Command Hub now. Elara rounded a corner to find Kale already at the hub's controls, his hands moving across the ancient interface with surprising confidence. The station is responding to human genetic markers, he explained. Everything's coming online. Through the command hub's viewport, Elara watched sleek black ships emerge from hyperspace. Their design was organic, predatory, everything her peaceful civilization had never imagined. How many? 15 capital ships, Lieutenant Kale reported, her voice eerily calm. Standard Ravager hunting formation. They're not expecting any resistance. This region hasn't seen combat in millennia. Commander Thane smiled grimly. Time to teach them why. The ancient station hummed to life around them, systems that had slept for 50,000 years awakening at humanity's call. Holographic displays sprang up, showing tactical data that made Lyra's scales ripple with confusion. I don't understand any of this, Elara admitted, staring at the combat readings. You don't need to, Lieutenant Kyle assured her. Just watch and learn. This is what humanity has been preparing for since before your ancestors learned to farm. The Ravager ships launched their first attack, energy weapons lighting up space. But instead of impacting the seemingly defenseless station, their shots disappeared into invisible barrier fields. Quantum deflection shields, Commander Thane explained. Technology we developed 50,000 years ago and kept hidden until now. Kale pointed to new contacts appearing on the tactical display. What are those? Watch, Lieutenant Kale said with a predator's smile. Small objects detached from the station's outer hull objects that had appeared to be simple structural elements. They unfolded like mechanical flowers, revealing weapon systems that made the Ravager's technology look primitive. Humanity's gift to the galaxy isn't just protection, Commander Thane said as the ancient weapons powered up. It's the promise that no peaceful species will ever face threats alone. The station's weapons opened fire, not with simple energy beams or projectiles, but with precisely calculated shots that seemed to bend space itself. Ravager ships found their shields failing, their weapons shorting out, their engines dying. "This is impossible," Lyra whispered, her scales shifting through colors faster than Alara had ever seen. The energy readings, the tactical precision. "This is humanity," Lieutenant Kale corrected. "This is what we've always been, not just warriors, but guardians. Each shot is calibrated to disable, not destroy. Even now, we're offering them a chance to learn a better way." The Ravager fleet attempted to regroup, launching fighters that spiraled toward the station. Commander Thane touched a control, and hidden defense turrets emerged from camouflage ports. "Dr. Brex," he said calmly, "your team's research helped us unlock these systems. Care to put your knowledge to use?" Alara stared at the weapons console. The interface was a perfect match for the training diagrams they'd discovered. All those hours studying ancient military doctrine suddenly had very real applications. The formations, she realized, they're not just about fighting, they're about control, containment, protection. "Exactly," Commander Thane nodded. "Target their engines. Show them why humanity was chosen to be the galaxy's guardians." With trembling hands, Alara input the commands she'd learned from 50,000-year-old training materials. The station's weapons responded perfectly, disabling the Ravager fighters without destroying them. "Beautiful shot," Lieutenant Kale commented. "You're a natural." Lyra's scales had settled into a steady gold, understanding at last. "This is why humans always seemed different, why you think differently about protection and defense. It's not just instinct or evolution, it's purpose," Commander Thane finished. "The purpose we chose before your ancestors took their first steps towards civilization." The remaining Ravager ships began to retreat, their hunters' confidence shattered by technology they couldn't comprehend. But Alara noticed something in their flight pattern. "They're not running randomly," she said, remembering the tactical lessons. "They're gathering data, learning." "Good eye," Lieutenant Kale praised. "They'll be back, with better weapons and strategies. That's why we're revealing ourselves now. The galaxy needs to remember why humanity chose to be its shield." As the last Ravager ship disappeared into hyperspace, Commander Thane turned to the research team. "Your peaceful civilizations are beautiful, Dr. Brex, worth protecting, worth fighting for. But peace isn't just the absence of warfare. It's the presence of guardians willing to stand watch." Alara looked at the ancient weapons returning to their hiding places, the shields powering down, the station resuming its innocent appearance. "All this time, we thought we were studying primitive cultures, trying to understand the galaxy's peaceful origins. when you were actually studying humanity's greatest achievement," Lyra finished, her scales glowing with revelation. "Teaching the galaxy how to live in peace by bearing the burden of war yourselves." Commander Thane nodded solemnly. "That's the truth we've protected for 50,000 years. The truth you'll help us share with the galaxy. Because the threats Commander Walsh warned about are rising, and humanity can no longer stand guard alone." "We won't have to," Elara said firmly, understanding at last why humans had let them find the ancient facility. "Because now we know what you've sacrificed to protect us, and we're ready to learn how to stand beside you." The station's lights returned to normal, but nothing else would ever be the same. Humanity's first gift to the galaxy had been peace. Their second gift would be teaching others how to preserve it. A week after the Ravager attack, the Galaxy Science Council chamber was packed with representatives from every known species. Elara stood at the podium, her research team beside her as she presented their findings to the assembled dignitaries. "We've spent generations studying peaceful societal development," she began, her voice steady despite her nervousness. "But we never understood why humanity seemed different. Now we know they chose to be different, so we could be peaceful." The holographic displays showed the ancient training facility, the hidden weapons, the technology that had protected countless developing civilizations. But more importantly, they showed the purpose behind it all. Humanity wasn't born to be warriors, Lyra added, her scales shimmering with conviction. They became warriors because they saw what the galaxy could be without warfare, and they chose to bear that burden alone. Commander Thane stepped forward, his presence commanding the room's attention. "For 50,000 years, we've watched over the galaxy's development. We've guided species toward cooperation, protected them from external threats, and kept the knowledge of warfare hidden in facilities like the one Dr. Brex discovered. But why reveal this now, High Counselor Vox?" asked, her crystalline form pulsing with curiosity. Lieutenant KL activated a new holographic display showing the Ravager ships and dozens of similar threats emerging across the galaxy. "Because peace isn't just inherited. Sometimes it must be defended, and humanity can no longer do it alone. We're not asking you to become warriors," Commander Thane clarified. "We're asking you to understand why warriors are sometimes necessary, to work with us in protecting what generations of humans have died to preserve." Elara watched understanding dawn across the assembled faces. "The ancient facility wasn't just a military installation," she explained. "It was a teaching tool, a way to show future generations the price of peace and the responsibility of power." Kale brought up the final piece of evidence, Commander Walsh's message about humanity's choice to become guardians rather than conquerors. The chamber fell silent as her words echoed through time. "We stand at a crossroads," Commander Thane concluded. "Humanity has carried this burden alone for 50 millennia. We've watched civilizations rise, guided their development, protected their innocence. But the galaxy is changing. New threats are emerging, and it's time for all species to understand the truth about their peaceful origins." Lyra's scales settled into a brilliant gold as she addressed the council. "We've learned that peace isn't merely the absence of conflict. It's the presence of guardians willing to prevent conflict. Humanity hasn't been hiding their warrior nature. They've been using it to protect us all." The council chamber erupted in discussion, but Elara noticed something remarkable. Instead of fear or rejection, she saw appreciation, understanding, and most importantly, a willingness to learn. High Counselor Vox rose, her crystalline form brilliant with purpose. "Commander Thane, on behalf of the Galaxy Science Council, we thank humanity for their 50,000 years of service, and we accept your offer to teach us the wisdom you've gained. Not to make you warriors," Lieutenant Keel added softly, "but to help you understand why warriors are sometimes needed." As the council session concluded, Elara found herself looking at her original research notes about peaceful societal development. She'd been right about peace being the natural state of most species. She just hadn't understood the incredible sacrifice that had made that peace possible. "Ready for your next assignment, Brex?" Commander Thane asked, approaching with a warm smile. Elara nodded, knowing that her work had only just begun. There were more hidden facilities to find, more ancient knowledge to recover, more truths to understand about humanity's role as the galaxy's first and most dedicated guardians. Because peace wasn't just a state of being, it was a gift humanity had given the galaxy 50,000 years ago and continued to protect even now. And finally, after all this time, the rest of the galaxy was ready to help carry that burden, not as warriors, but as students of humanity's most important lesson, that true peace comes not from the absence of the ability to fight, but from the wisdom to know when and why to stand guard over those who cannot fight for themselves. The galaxy was about to enter a new era, and this time, humanity wouldn't have to face it alone.